Welcome to the Henry George Daily Devotional, episode 23. We continue with chapter 5, The Real Functions of Capital. As no matter how much water is poured in, there can never be in a bucket more than a bucket full, so no greater amount of wealth will be used as capital than is required by the machinery of production and exchange that under all the existing conditions, intelligence, habit, security, density of population, etc., best suit the people. And I am inclined to think that as a general rule this amount will be had, that the social organism secretes, as it were, the necessary amount of capital, just as the human organism in a healthy condition secretes the requisite fat. Wonder if we could get George to weigh in on the obesity epidemic and the possibility of our decline in metabolism as a species. We continue. But whether the amount of capital ever does limit the productiveness of industry and thus fix a maximum which wages cannot exceed, it is evident that it is not from any scarcity of capital that the poverty of the masses in civilized countries proceeds. For not only do wages nowhere reach the limit fixed by the productiveness of industry, but wages are relatively the lowest where capital is most abundant. The tools and machinery of production are in all the most progressive countries evidently in excess of the use made of them, and any prospect of remunerative employment brings out more than the capital needed. The bucket is not only full, it is overflowing. So evident is this, that not only among the ignorant, but by men of high economic reputation, is industrial depression attributed to the abundance of machinery and the accumulation of capital. And war, which is the destruction of capital, is looked upon as the cause of brisk trade and high wages, an idea, strangely enough, so great is the confusion. I feel like an idea, strangely enough, so great is the confusion of thought on such matters, countenanced by many who hold that capital employs labor and pays wages. Our purpose in this inquiry is to solve the problem to which so many self-contradictory answers are given, in ascertaining clearly what capital really is and what capital really does. We have made the first and an all-important step, but it is only a first step. Let us recapitulate and proceed. We have seen that the current theory that wages depend upon the ratio between the number of laborers and the amount of capital devoted to the employment of labor is inconsistent with the general fact that wages and interest do not rise and fall inversely, but conjointly. This discrepancy having led us to an examination of the grounds of the theory, we have seen further that, contrary to the current idea, wages are not drawn from capital at all, but come directly from the produce of the labor for which they are paid. We have seen that capital does not advance wages or subsist laborers, but that its function are to assist labor in production with tools, seed, etc., and with the wealth required to carry on exchanges. We are thus irresistibly led to practical conclusions so important as amply to justify the pains taken to make sure of them. For if wages are drawn not from capital but from the produce of labor, the current theories as to the relations of capital and labor are invalid, and all remedies, whether proposed by professors of political economy or working men, which look to the alleviation of poverty, either by the increase of capital or the restriction of the number of laborers or the efficiency of their work, must be condemned. Yes, we must condemn all the current theories. If each laborer in performing the labor really creates the fund from which his wages are drawn, then wages cannot be diminished by the increase of laborers, but on the contrary, as the efficiency of labor manifestly increases with the number of laborers, the more laborers, other things being equal, the higher should wages be. By this necessary proviso, quote, other things being equal, end quote, brings us to a question which must be considered and disposed of before we can further proceed. That question is, do the productive powers of nature tend to diminish with the increasing drafts made upon them by increasing population? Bum, bum, bum. And that would finish chapter 5, which finishes book 1, Wages and Capital. So book 2, here we are in Population of Subsistence with apparently 4 chapters. It's all about the population and Malthusianism. It's similar to the Wages and Capital chapbook where George likes to make his point and then make it again a couple times. Chapter 1 will be about the Malthusian theory, its genesis and support. Chapter 2, inferences from facts. Chapter 3, inferences from analogy. Chapter 4, disproof of the Malthusian theory. And then he has a quote from Tennyson. Are God and nature then at strife, that nature lends such evil dreams? So careful of the type she seems, so careless of the single life. Alright, Chapter 1, the Malthusian theory, its genesis and support. Behold, behind the theory we have been considering lies a theory we have yet to consider. The current doctrine as to the derivation and law of wages finds its strongest support in a doctrine as generally accepted, the doctrine to which Malthus has given his name, that population naturally tends to increase faster than subsistence. These two doctrines, fitting in with each other, frame the answer which the current political economy gives to the great problem we are endeavoring to solve. In what has preceded, the current doctrine that wages are determined by the ratio between capital and laborers has, I think, been shown to be so utterly baseless as to excite surprise as to how it could so generally and so long obtain. It is not to be wondered at that such a theory should have arisen in a state of society where the great body of laborers seem to depend for employment and wages upon a separate class of capitalists. Nor yet that under these conditions it should have maintained itself among the masses of men who rarely take the trouble to separate the real from the apparent. But it is surprising that a theory which on examination appears to be so groundless could have been successively accepted by so many acute thinkers as have during the present century devoted their powers to the elucidation and development of the science of political economy. Alright, so all these smart people believe in this bad theory. The explanation of this otherwise unaccountable fact is to be found in the general acceptance of the Malthusian theory. The current theory of wages has never been fairly put upon its trial because, backed by the Malthusian theory, it has seemed in the minds of political economists a self-evident truth. These two theories mutually blend with, strengthen, and defend each other, while they both derive additional support from a principle brought prominently forward in the discussions of the theory of rent, viz., that past a certain point, the application of capital and labor to land yields a diminishing return. Together, they give such an explanation of the phenomena presented in a highly organized and advancing society as seems to fit all the facts and which has thus prevented closer investigation. I would say that all this talk about the Malthusian theory that we're about to do, and we're starting to, could probably be very much applied to people's views on immigration. Let's keep that in mind as we proceed. Which of these two theories is entitled to historical precedence, it is hard to say. The theory of population was not formulated in such a way as to give it the standing of a scientific dogma until after that had been done for the theory of wages. But they naturally spring up and grow with each other, and were both held in a form more or less crude long prior to any attempt to construct a system of political economy. It is evident from several passages that though he never fully developed it, the Malthusian theory was in rudimentary form present in the mind of Adam Smith. And to this, it seems to me, must be largely due the misdirection which on the subject of wages his speculations took. But however this may be, so closely are the two theories connected, so completely do they complement each other, that Buckle, reviewing the history of the development of political economy in his, quote, examination of the Scotch intellect during the 18th century, end quote, attributes mainly to Malthus the honor of decisively proving the current theory of wages by advancing the current theory of the pressure of population upon subsistence. He says in his History of Civilization in England, Volume 3, Chapter 5, and I'm not going to tell you what Mr. Buckle says, we're ending it right there. Welcome back, Henry George A. Devotional number 24. Yes. And we were just about to find out what Mr. Buckle thought about the pressure of population upon subsistence. Here we go. He says in his History of Civilization in England, Volume 3, Chapter 5, quote, scarcely had the 18th century passed away when it was decisively proved that the reward of labor depends solely on two things, namely, the magnitude of that national fund out of which all labor is paid, and the number of laborers among whom the fund is to be divided. This vast step in our knowledge is due mainly, though not entirely, to Malthus, whose work on population, besides marking an epoch in the history of speculative thought, has already produced considerable practical results and will probably give rise to others more considerable still. It was published in 1798, so that Adam Smith, who died in 1790, missed what to him would have been the intense pleasure of seeing how in it his own views were expanded rather than corrected. Indeed, it is certain that without Smith there would have been no Malthus. That is, unless Smith had laid the foundation, Malthus could not have raised the superstructure. End quote. That was what Buckle said describing political economy thoughts in the 18th century, I guess. All right. We're back to George. The famous doctrine which ever since its enunciation has so powerfully influenced thought, not alone in the province of political economy, but in regions of even higher speculation, was formulated by Malthus in the proposition that, as shown by the growth of the North American colonies, the natural tendency of population is to double itself at least every 25 years, thus increasing in a geometrical ratio, while the subsistence that can be obtained from land under circumstances the most favorable to human industry could not possibly be made to increase faster than an arithmetical ratio, or by an addition every 25 years of a quantity equal to what it at present produces. End quote. Or new quote now. The necessary effect of these two different rates of increase when brought together, Mr. Malthus naively goes on to say, will be very striking. Yeah, so one of these, the idea here is population, you know, it's exponential, right? It is the number in the population times itself is how it increases, whereas supposedly there's a principle that production is simply some quantity is added every so much period of time. Doesn't matter how much there currently exists, you're just always adding some new amount. And so, yeah, in math terms, in the limit, uh, one of these is going to outpace the other, the exponential. But I'm no mathematician. All right, we're going to continue with this quote from Malthus, I guess this is. Yes. Here's what Malthus says. Let us call the population of this island 11 millions, and suppose the present produce equal to the easy support of such a number. In the first 25 years, the population will be 22 millions. That would be double of 11. And the food being also doubled, this means of subsistence, the means of subsistence would be equal to this increase. In the next 25 years, the population will be 44 millions, and the means of subsistence only equal to the support of 33 millions. Yes, every 25 years, we're adding 11 million in production, but we're doubling the population. That is what Malthus is taking us through. In the next period, the population will be equal to 88 millions, that is 44, doubled, and the means of subsistence just equal to the support of half that number. Yes, we would have been at, what were we, 30, we were 11, 22, 33, 44, or 30. Yes. We would have 44 million subsistence. And at the conclusion of the first century, the population would be 176 millions, and the means of subsistence only equal to the support of 55 millions, leaving a population of 121 millions totally unprovided for. Taking the whole earth instead of this island, emigration would of course be excluded. And supposing the present population equal to 1,000 millions, the human species would increase as the numbers 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, and subsistence as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. In 2 centuries, the population would be to the means of subsistence as 256 to 9. In 3 centuries, 4096 to 13. And in 2,000 years, the difference would be almost incalculable. End quote of Malthus. Such a result is of course prevented by the physical fact that no more people can exist than can find subsistence, and hence Malthus' conclusion is that this tendency of population to indefinite increase must be held back either by moral restraint upon the reproductive faculty, don't have any kids, or by the various causes which increase mortality, which he resolves into vice and misery. Yeah, kill everybody. We'll fight everybody. Such causes as prevent propagation he styles the preventative check. Such causes as increase mortality he styles the positive check. This is the famous Malthusian doctrine as promulgated by Malthus himself in the, quote, Essay on Population, end quote. It is not worth while to dwell upon the fallacy involved in the assumption of geometrical and arithmetical rates of increase, a play upon proportions which hardly rises to the dignity of that in the familiar puzzle of the hare and the tortoise, in which the hare is made to chase the tortoise through all eternity without coming up with him. I think that's referencing the idea that the hare in each second can go half the distance from where he is to where the tortoise is. It's like Zeno's paradox. It's not the hare and the tortoise like race, like parable about the hare taking a nap at the finish line and then the tortoise coming up and passes him. That's a different story. Back to George. For this assumption is not necessary to the Malthusian doctrine, or at least is expressly repudiated by some of those who fully accept that doctrine, as for instance John Stuart Mill, who speaks of it as, quote, an unlucky attempt to give precision to things which do not admit of it, which every person capable of reasoning must see is wholly superfluous to the argument. Footnote. This comes from Principles of Political Economy, Book 2, Chapter 9, Section 6. Yet, notwithstanding what Mill says, it is clear that Malthus himself lays great stress upon his geometrical and arithmetical ratios, and it is also probable that it is to these ratios that Malthus is largely indebted for his fame, as they supplied one of those high-sounding formulas that with many people carry far more weight than the clearest reasoning. Yes, tricking people with fancy math functions. That has been the career of economists since time immemorial. Uh, Back to what Mill was saying. We're in the middle of John Stuart Mill's quote, and he continues: "The essence of the Malthusian doctrine is that population tends to increase faster than the power of providing food. And whether this difference be stated as a geometrical ratio for population and an arithmetical ratio for subsistence, as by Malthus, or as a constant ratio for population and a diminishing ratio for subsistence, as by Mill, wait, is only a matter of statement." I guess we're back to George. I guess this John Stuart Mill quote ended at this footnote, and this text I read of Progress and Poverty has a lot of clerical errors. Whatever technique they use to like scan optical whatever to scan the actual documents, the book, it didn't go super smoothly. Maybe one day I will copy the book to a digital format. No. Although, yeah, if I were just like marking this as I went through with where I'm finding typos and stuff. Hello, throw me away 9001. This is one of your favorite parts of Progress and Poverty. It's hard for me to pick a favorite. It's all so good. Yeah. Oh well, I have not noted where I found typos, and I'm not going back now, but maybe I could consider. No. Anyway, the vital point on which both agree, and this is George speaking again, is, to use the words of Malthus, that there is a natural tendency and constant effort in population to increase beyond the means of subsistence. Alright, that's what we're going to take. That's what George is going to take as Malthus's view. The Malthusian doctrine, as at presently held, may be thus stated in its strongest and least objectional form. Yes, here's George Steele Manning Malthus. That population, constantly tending to increase, must, when unrestrained, ultimately press against the limits of subsistence, not as against a fixed, but as against an elastic barrier, which makes the procurement of subsistence progressively more and more difficult. And thus, wherever reproduction has had time to assert its power and is unchecked by prudence, there must exist that degree of want which will keep population within the bounds of subsistence. And that will do it for episode 24 of the Henry George Daily Devotional. Burr, burr, burr. Cool. How did hello throw me away? Do you have another name on Discord I would know you by from the Georgism Discords? HEDD 24 Book 2 Chapter 1. Oh, okay. Yeah, I've seen you. Thanks for coming by. Yeah. It's yeah, I was thinking about like creating like a TikTok account the other day to like some George's content on TikTok, but I didn't do it. Now, the thing is, I recorded for I fly out of town Thursday tomorrow, and then I come back. I need to like batch these. When do I come back? April 1st at night. Eh. Alright, I'm going to create one more episode. Where were we? Here. Oh, but we didn't. So in that episode, I just read book 2. Um, we left off. Subsistence, and book 2 is the Malthusian theory. Its genesis. No, book 2 is population of subsistence. Chapter 1 is the Malthusian theory and its support. And this, we just did episode 24, book 2, chapter 1. 23, book 1, chapter 5, finished. Book 2 started. Okay. George quotes, explains what the Malthusian doctrine is, makes fun of the fancy math, but presents a Steelman version. Meanwhile, um, yeah, the real functions of capital. Employ it. George says we've thoroughly debunked the idea that wages are from dividing the amount of available capital among the would-be or among the laborers. Good enough. Alright. Hello, Scrubbles. We're batching episodes because I'm going out of town again. Okay, and recording starting now. Welcome to the Henry George Daily Devotional number 25. We are in chapter 1 of book 2. Book 2 being population and subsistence. And chapter 1 is the Malthusian theory, its genesis and support. We just learned what the Malthusian theory was. Basically, population grows faster. Malthus thinks population grows faster than we're able to produce stuff. And so, because we can't produce enough stuff, for whatever reason, population has to be kept down. We now continue with George. Although in reality not more repugnant to the sense of harmonious adaptation by creative beneficence and wisdom than the complacent no theory, which throws the responsibility for poverty and its concomitants upon the inscrutable decrees of Providence, without attempting to trace them, this theory, in avowedly making vice and suffering the necessary results of a natural instinct, I think that means the desire to have sex, with which are linked the purest and sweetest affections, having sex with someone you love, and making babies, comes rudely in collision with ideas deeply rooted in the human mind, and it was, as soon as formally promulgated, fought with a bitterness in which zeal was often more manifest than logic. But it has triumphantly withstood the ordeal, and in spite of the refutations of the Godwins, the denunciations of the Cobbetts, and all the shafts that argument, sarcasm, ridicule, and sentiment could direct against it, today it stands in the world of thought as an accepted truth, which compels the recognition even of those who would fain disbelieve it. I don't know who the Godwins nor who the Cobbetts are, but I'm guessing they thought that good Christian people should have lots of children, maybe. And yet, the Malthusian doctrine has still been believed, according to George. Just like a lot of people today think we're overpopulating. The causes of its triumph, the sources of its strength are not obscure, seemingly backed by an indisputable arithmetical truth that a continuously increasing population must eventually exceed the capacity of the earth to furnish food or even standing room. The Malthusian theory is supported by analogies in the animal and vegetable kingdoms. The vegetable kingdom, where life everywhere beats wastefully against the barriers that hold its different species in check, analogies to which the course of modern thought, in leveling distinctions between different forms of life, has given a greater and greater weight. And it is apparently corroborated by many obvious facts, such as the prevalence of poverty, vice, and misery amid dense populations. The general effect of material progress in increasing population without relieving pauperism, and the rapid growth of numbers in newly settled countries, and the evident retardation of increase in more densely settled countries by the mortality among the class condemned to want. Kind of zoned out during that. But yes, it is seemingly corroborated or apparently corroborated because we do see poverty, vice, and misery in really crowded places, and so you could assume that that's due to overpopulation. I get it, but they're wrong. The Malthusian theory furnishes a general principle which accounts for these and similar facts, and accounts for them in a way which harmonizes with the doctrine that wages are drawn from capital, and with all the principles that are deduced from it. According to the current doctrine of wages, wages fall as increase in the number of laborers necessitates. Wages fall as increase in the number of laborers necessitates a more minute division of capital. According to the Malthusian theory, poverty appears as an increase in population necessitates the more minute division of subsistence. Yes. According to Malthusian theory, more people means smaller pieces of the pie. According to the debunked theory of wages coming out of capital, more laborers means smaller pieces of the pie. So it makes sense that people who believe Malthusian's theory would be likely to believe that wages are paid out of capital and vice versa. Okay, we continue with George. It requires but the identification of capital with subsistence, and the number of laborers with population, an identification made in the current treatises on political economy, where the terms are often converted to make the two propositions as identical formally as they are substantially. We have a footnote. The effect of the Malthusian doctrine upon the definitions of capital may, I think, be seen by comparing see pages 3 through 34. The definition of Smith, who wrote prior to Malthus, with the definitions of Ricardo, McCulloch, and Mill, who wrote subsequently. We're not going to go back to those pages. And thus it is, as stated by Buckle in the passage previously quoted, that the theory of population advanced by Malthus has appeared to prove decisively the theory of wages advanced by Smith. Yes, so to sum it up, Smith said wages are paid out of how much capital is available, and then Malthus went further to say yes, and not only that, but because we're having more children, then we're able to create capital. This is what is causing all of this poverty. Progress and poverty. Ricardo, who a few years subsequent to the publication of the Essay on Population corrected the mistake into which Smith had fallen as to the nature and cause of rent, furnished the Malthusian theory an additional support by calling attention to the fact that rent would increase as the necessities of increasing population forced cultivation to less and less productive lands, or to less and less productive points on the same lands, thus explaining the rise of rent. In this way was formed a triple combination by which the Malthusian theory has been buttressed on both sides, the previously received doctrine of wages and the subsequently received doctrine of rent, exhibiting in this view but special examples of the operation of the general principle to which the name of Malthus has been attached. The fall in wages and the rise in rents, which come with increasing population, being but modes in which the pressure of population upon subsistence shows itself. This is what Malthus is into. Thus, taking its place in the very framework of political economy, for the science as currently accepted has undergone no material change or improvements since the time of Ricardo, though in some minor points it has been cleared and illustrated. The Malthusian theory, though repugnant to sentiments before alluded to, is not repugnant to other ideas which, in older countries at least, generally prevail among the working classes, but on the contrary, Like the theory of wages by which it is supported and in turn supports, it harmonizes with them. To the mechanic or operative, the cause of low wages and of the ability to get employment is obviously the competition caused by the pressure of numbers. And in the squalid abodes of poverty, what seems clearer than that there are too many people? But But the great cause of the triumph of this theory is that instead of menacing any vested right or antagonizing any powerful interest, it is eminently soothing and reassuring to the classes who, wielding the power of wealth, largely dominate thought. Yes, the rich people. At a time when old support, I don't know, I don't want to get in this like trend of like just always hating rich people. I mean, I guess it is. I don't know. Not simply for being like people who create wealth is valuable. We can't forget that. We we want to create wealth. We want to improve our lives. Tyranny is evil and should be fought against. Anyway, yes, there are these powerful classes that are wealthy, uh, and it is easy for them to think that we just shouldn't overpopulate. Um, Idiocracy. All right, we'll continue with George. Yeah, we'll finish this passage. This paragraph. At a time when old supports were falling away, it came to the rescue of the special privileges by which a few monopolize so much of the good things of this world, proclaiming a natural cause for the want and misery, which, if attributed to political institutions, must condemn every government under which they exist. The quote, the essay on population was avowedly a reply to William Godwin's Inquiry Concerning Political Justice. Okay, so Godwin was mentioned earlier. Now we know a little bit more about Godwin. His work was a work asserting the principle of human equality, and its purpose was to justify existing inequality by shifting the responsibility for it from human institutions to the laws of the Creator. Okay, so he goes for a religious spiritual explanation primarily. There was nothing new in this, for Wallace, nearly 40 years before, had brought forward the danger of excessive multiplication as the answer to the demands of justice for an equal distribution of wealth. But the circumstances of the times were such as to make the same idea, when brought forward by Malthus, peculiarly grateful to a powerful class, in whom an intense fear of any questioning of the existing state of things had been generated by the outburst of the French Revolution. I would direct you all to the website YouTube and to search for the Monty Python skit about having a bunch of kids. I forget what it's called. Oh well. That should be enough of a clue. You'll find it. See you later. All right. This is 25. Um, George says that a parent conveniently Malthusian doctrine aligns with the wrong view of wages. It also lets the power feel or religious blame the poor. Alright. Now it's time to just upload everything. '25, Book 2, Chapter 1. Continued a second time. Okay, VLC. Nope. Wow. We'll start with 23. Let's try. We could do. I don't think we can do two at once, because how would you name them? Um. 25. Okay, we have created all of our wave files. For this part we can listen to some music. That was episode 23. Now we'll do 24. Wait, not on the 29th. That should come out on the 28th. Damn it.
Say you stayed home, alone with the flu. Find out from friends that wasn't true. Go out at night with your headphones on
28th.
again. Walk through the Manhattan valleys of the dead. Didn't wanna be your ghost. Didn't wanna be anyone's ghost. Didn't wanna be your ghost. Didn't wanna be anyone's ghost. But I don't want anybody else. I don't want anybody else. You said I came close as anyone's come to live underwater for more than a month. Said it was not inside my heart. It was. You said it should tear a kid apart. It does. Didn't wanna be your ghost. Didn't wanna be anyone's ghost. Didn't wanna be your ghost. Didn't wanna be anyone's ghost. But I don't want anybody else. 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 I had a hole in the middle where the lightning went through. I told my friends not to worry. I had a hole in the middle, so my side showed.
Come on, preview.
I told my friends not to worry. Didn't wanna be your ghost. Didn't wanna be anyone's ghost. Didn't wanna be your ghost. Didn't wanna be anyone's ghost.
Dear catastrophe waitress, dear catastrophe waitress.
Schedule
I'm sorry if you seem to
28th,
have the weight of
3:00
the world over you.
a.m.
I cherish your smile. There's a word
1
of peace on your lips. Say it, and with tenderness I'll cherish you.
I'll cherish you,
Dear catastrophe girlfriend.
dear catastrophe girlfriend.
I'm sorry if he hit you with a full can of
Coke, it's no
no
joke.
Your face is bleeding. You'll soon be leaving this town to the clowns who worship no one but themselves. No one but themselves. I hate feeling this way. Oh, I hate feeling this way. Oh, I know that you hate it too. Oh,
Excuse me.
now that your coffee's growing cold. Oh, all of the customers look so old. Oh, honey, if I could be so bold.
Done.
Dear catastrophe waitress, dear catastrophe waitress. I'm sorry if the kids hold you in cold disregard. I know it's hard. Stick to what you know. You blow them all to the wall when they realize what you've been
minutes exactly.
What you've been working for. What you've been working for.
What? Oh, hold on.
I saw it written and I saw it say, Bingo Moon is on its way. None of you stand so tall. Bingo Moon gonna get you on the Bingo Moon. Yes, Bingo Moon. Bing, 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 bing. Bing Moon.
Today's devotional.
Bing, 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 bing. Bing Moon. Saw it written and I saw it say, Bingo Moon is on its way. None of you stand so tall. Bingo Moon gonna get you home. It's a Bingo Moon. Yes, Bingo Moon.
Whoa.
Slip from the trees to the dirt to the menace to the wild to the car and the smoke of dreams like a curl to your shin like a maniacal swing. Fresh from the breast now, river running fat to the man I'm on a rock to the man I'm on a fleet to a flood to a drain now, river now chain. I was in the war. You were in the war. Plump from the sugar water pump with the city, your back to the cannon with a match from a milk into a masquerade of a mind that I could take that. Bones in a bowl like a toad in a hole, take the shape of the mold like a mummy on a pole, and a mirror little head bob around when you're dead. I was on my knees. You were on your knees. I know reptiles, just soft-boiled eggs, t-shirts and ties, waiting for the flashing green man, quivering and wobbling just like all the eggs you know. I'm going to kill a stranger, so don't you be a stranger. Oh baby, it's alright. It's alright to feel like a fat child in a pushchair, old enough to run, old enough to fire a gun. Oh baby, it's alright. It's alright to feel like a fat child in a pushchair,